summit. We're continuing our summit, we're following our agenda, and in our agenda it was stated like the diplomats panel talk, which is happening straight right now. We're going to discuss very complex but very important questions. So let's start our discussion. And at the end of the discussion, you are free to ask any question you wish during the Q&A session.
Okay, such a loud microphone. Thank you for such a brief but concise introduction. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexander. I'll be the moderator of this discussion panel. First of all, I, as a moderator, will take the floor, some kind of administration bias, but still, I think it is commonly understood, especially in this gathering, that the role of youth in the modern peace-building processes, in the future peace-building processes as well, is not only the most important, but also the most developing, the most strategic, and the most vital. Because it is clearly understood among all nations that peace is something indispensable with the modern international order. Without peace, no further development, no further social and economic advancement is possible. And that is why all nations, at least at their programs, at their strategies, strive for peace. Eleanor Roosevelt once said that it isn't enough to talk about peace. We need to believe in it, we need to create it, and we need to work for it. And I do really believe that among our panelists, there are all people who do not only will talk about peace, but by their work, by their positions, they're contributing to global peace, global security, and common understanding, and the development of the whole world, not to say the least. And first of all, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Alex Leynaerts, Ambassador of Belgium, to share his thoughts and maybe to share his first-hand experience on peace and peace building. Please welcome His Excellency Ambassador.
So good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to be with you this morning. I would like to thank you and thank the Institute of International Relations to give this opportunity to exchange views on this important issue, peace building and peace process. If you allow me, I will say a few words about my career. I started my career in 2001, and 2 days ago I explained it was a strange coincidence because I passed the diplomatic exam in 2001, and I received the result of this exam on September 11, 9/11/2001. So it's a strange coincidence, but all my career I tried to promote values of peace and democracy. So I went to Venezuela. I was diplomat in Venezuela, then in Morocco. I was head of mission in Sarajevo, not an easy country, Bosnia and Herzegovina. I was ambassador in Lebanon and also in charge of Syria. And now I have the pleasure to be in your country, in Ukraine. So I would say that now Ukraine is at the crossroads, because you have this dramatic and war in Donbass since 5 years now, more than 5 years, and you maybe have an opportunity to change the way. Because, and I will talk maybe later about the Minsk peace agreement, and maybe make a comparison, because when I was in former Yugoslavia, I also had this experience of the Dayton peace agreement. So, but now you have, well, the government and the president of Ukraine maybe have this opportunity to change the way and to go on this peace way. It will not be easy. That's absolutely sure. A peace agreement is never easy, and I would add that peace agreement is never perfect. Never perfect. So that's why I can understand that the Minsk agreement can be criticized, of course. I can understand that now President Zelensky and his government are criticized, but in my opinion, they are very brave. And I remember there was a conference here in Kiev. It was in September. It's called YES conference. It's a famous conference, and we had many international guests. And one of these guests was the former president of Colombia, President Santos. And I met Santos, and I really respect this man because, and he explained this, when he was elected president of Colombia, he was very popular. The same than President Zelensky. He was elected by more than 60% of the Colombian people. Then he decided to start the peace talk with the guerrilla, the FARC, and his popularity decreased. And that's exactly what can now happen with your president, with the president of Ukraine, because he chose to go on this way of the peace process, to accelerate the discussion of the Minsk peace agreement, and that's why, in my opinion, and as an ambassador of Belgium and a European country, I really think, I'm convinced that we have to support this process. It will not be easy, but we will see next month, in December 9th, we will have, for the first time since 3 years, we will have a summit, what we call a Normandy summit. So Normandy means Ukraine, Russian Federation, France and Germany. So you will have President Zelensky, President Putin, President Macron and Angela Merkel together in Paris, and they will try, we hope so, they will try to make some progress. We will see, because we know that it's not easy, especially with your big neighbor, the Russian Federation, of course. We don't have to be naive, but we will see on this occasion what can be the progress. But we have to repeat what are our values, what are our rules. And the first is the respect for the integrity of a country. And integrity, territorial integrity, I mean, of Ukraine is non-discutable. So I think that's the first. So the condition for starting the peace talk in Normandy format, and is to respect the integrity of the country. And maybe later I can make a comparison with the Dayton Peace Agreement in former Yugoslavia, but I think we now have to be realistic, pragmatic, but also maybe optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for quite a comprehensive introduction speech. Now let me introduce our panelists. First of all, we have Hannah Musavi, Policy and Programs Advisor for the Global Diplomatic Forum, founder and consultant for Pomegranate House, lecturer on the MBA.
Hello.
And we have Dr. Mohsin Kamal from Pakistan, Global Peace Ambassador and youth activist, the one that brought us up today during his first speech. I think we'll proceed with the first question now, just a warm-up for everyone. Everyone willing can start answering it. The first question will be, what is essentially peace in modern world? Previously, we supposed that peace is just the absence of war, absence of violence, and until there is no shooting, no gunmen running on the streets, we have peace in our country. But nowadays, with new hybrid threats, with the development of information and warfare technologies, what is peace? So, who will?
Hello. Hi. So, I think peace has been traditionally been since war happens, then you have to try to intervene. But actually, peace has always be the prevention of anything that would happen. And I think with modern day technology and social media being a bit more influential, this is ever more important that we actually look at the society, whereas a lot of people just look at the higher tier of the structures of how to do things. So as we do know, a lot of things in society that causes peace or destruction. So if people aren't inclusive, if they're dismissive regarding race, gender, sexuality, any kind of exclusion can disrupt society. Economy disrupts society. So if, for instance, the government itself is not including the poorest sectors of society, or you know, it depends on the socio-economic class of every individual, but there needs to be a better system in place to be able to make everyone inclusive. That's the only way to actually create a peaceful society. There's no other way. Social media just highlights it. It makes people realise what they don't have and what possibilities there are. But unfortunately, social media is very dystopian. It creates this concept that other people have something when everyone is just trying to show the best that they could be, not actually what's going on in their lives. So it's the idea of something that isn't really attainable.
Hi everyone. Well, peace is basically, I would think, whether in the modern world or the Orthodox world, is basically the ideal state of freedom and happiness that we share amongst ourselves and the nations at large. The social relationship and friendship that we create in the absence of hostility and violence, not only related to the war, is basically what peace is. And as a youngsters and global peace ambassadors, I think achieving peace is not only the absence of war, that we take it into that context. It's basically that there are a number of aspects of achieving peace. If we educate every child, every individual on this earth, it gives you the ability to think. It gives you the ability of freedom of speech. It gives you diversity to accept and harness cultural acceptance. And that's how, one way or the other, peace has a number of branches like a tree. So one aspect or the other, if you cater all these minor aspects of achieving peace, you can actually become a sustainable world. Thank you.
We have too many microphones. So I share your opinion, of course. I would add that, of course, the first condition of peace is the end of violence. That's obvious. But then you have other condition to maintain the peace. That's maybe more difficult. And maybe the most difficult condition is reconciliation. And I experienced it in former Yugoslavia, but also in Lebanon, because in both countries you had what we can call, well, we have multi-confessional society, and we had what we can call confessional war, and it's very difficult then a reconciliation. So I don't know what will be. We all hope that we will have the end of the war in Donbass, and I hope as soon as possible. But what we need after is reconciliation between the people living now in Donetsk and Luhansk and all Ukrainian people, because, and I repeat it everywhere, people living in Donetsk and Luhansk are Ukrainian. And we need a reconciliation with them too.
Well, I suppose we have some kind of mutual understanding among our speakers on several topics. For example, each of you have mentioned that the peace starts from different layers, especially from the low one. For example, Dr. Kamal mentioned education as one of the most important prerogatives for peace. Mr. Ambassador also mentioned reconciliation as an integral part of peace, and that is why I'd like to proceed with the question, what is the role of youth, basically? Because youth are agents of education, youth are agents of communication, of reconciliation, basically. So what is the role of youth in global and, besides, local peace building? And maybe a separate sub-question for Dr. Kamal concerning youth, what is also the role of global peace ambassadors, who are mainly young people? So it's up to you, the floor is open.
Okay. Okay, the role of youth. Well, basically what I teach or practice back in Pakistan about peace in youngsters is basically that you have to start from the grassroots level. What I tell and what I preach actually, how we can achieve peace, youngsters, locally or globally, is that there are certain points that you have to look into. Like if you want to achieve peace locally in any country or region, maybe in Ukraine, it's like you have to like live in the moment right now. Try to radiate positive activities, lend a helping hand, and you should give a vibes to others that they should let go, and try to mediate on what your steps are, so, and plus try to educate people around you. These are the local things that you can do in order to achieve peace in the local area. As far as the global peace ambassadors, it's a huge responsibility. And we are living in an age of globalization where we have social media, we have print and electronic media which we can use to harness peace amongst ourselves. We can make linkages, bonds, and we accept diversity, each other's religious concepts, and this is the way we can like harness peace globally. And that's it. Thank you.
Ways to harness peace, basically. Yep. So within the youth, I mean, I think we all do agree that education is key, because obviously that's where the youth get all their information from. But a lot of the time, and it's a rising number that people aren't able to access the best education or the best opportunities, and it is becoming a very small amount of people that have the most opportunities in the world. And this number is rising everywhere in every single country. So, day-to-day life, you can do things that you can just be kind. Like the survival of the fittest beforehand was always the most ruthless. But now the theory has changed, where the survival of the fittest is the most kindest. To be able to be the kindest in life, actually you provide just an extended hand to anyone. You never know what that might do. So I'm an advocate for all different types of charity. Like I'm a trustee of a homeless charity. We make food using surplus foods and feed the homeless. And a part of that, a massive integral part of this charity is the community aspect, to create a family unit. So a lot of people that actually suffer from mental health or so many different things is actually because of the lack of the family unit and that security. So the youth at the moment, because of social media, because of technology, they aren't as inclusive as they previously were before. Evolutionary, bless you, with all different cultures, it's been very important to be so ingrained in the culture, within the family, and a family unit has been very, very important. Time goes on, and actually people become far more independent. Independence isn't necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, you need to know how to balance it. You become singular, you become a little bit more depressed, you don't understand the support unit that we previously had before. So actually, keeping ourselves, in good communities and helping one another, giving back to the community, these little things actually trickle off, and they're a massive, massive ripple effect that can help so many people that you don't even realise. That little bit of kindness can go massive. Like someone else that, there's a whole thing of negative energy or negative or anger. It's contagious. Similar with happiness, and kindness. If you're nasty to someone because someone did something to you, it carries on for the rest of the day. So you sometimes just have to rise above it, realise what's going on. Like, actually, I don't want to follow suit. What people have done to me, I don't want to carry on doing this. I'm going to be better. And we all can be. We have the ability. It's just that people choose not to. Because they look around and they're like, oh, they haven't, why should I? This is where we evolve.
Yes, I do agree, and I would add that the impact of social media on the young people, the youth, is not always positive. And I will give you an example. In Syria, in the beginning of the war in Syria, many young people in Europe were attracted by a fake message on social media about freedom. It was not a freedom war, it was a horrible war in Syria. But I also want to give a positive example. I experienced it in Srebrenica with young people. So Srebrenica was maybe the worst event during the war in former Yugoslavia. So all the Bosniak men and young men were killed there. Only women were not killed by the Serb militants. And so after the war, of course, hate between the Serb and the Bosniak community was very high, of course. And what we did, I did it with an NGO, Srebrenica, with young people and even with children. We supported a musical event with young people and children, Bosniak and Serb. And they sing and they dance together.
Well, quite an interesting approach there. And you know, I like the coherent and understandable mood of our discussion, like really cozy share of thoughts. And that is the reason why I'd like to be some kind of provocative now. You see, there are a lot of skeptics, especially in the conflict zones, for example in Ukraine nowadays, who demand fast and resolutive answers. So, let's just imagine I am some of those folks. And I'd like to hear the answer to the question, what is the ultimate tool to resolve conflict? Because we still have fightings, people still die, education is a long-term process, reconciliation is merely impossible. Just kidding. So what is the ultimate tool to resolve conflicts? In terms of speaking to some provocative folks, how can we smooth them down?
Because every single war around the world, let's look at the correlating factors here. The people aren't happy with what's happening within the government. They can't access things. They don't have any money. There are so many different things that are happening within war across the whole world that actually there are some correlating factors. You have other reasons for the war. It could be religious reasons, governmental, philosophical, theoretical. But actually, it always goes down to them blaming something else, but actually, government systems haven't been helping everyone in society. So the best means for war, I mean, I can't say every single war is going to go like that way because it's influenced by different ways. But it's to actually not focus on our primal instincts of being angry and then lashing out. It's actually looking what can be done. If actually the government is not helping you, how can you help yourselves? That's why there's far more entrepreneurs in the world. That's what, at the moment, it's really rising, especially within China, but they use the systems that they can. Use the cards you have. I'm half Iranian, half English. I use my cards when I want. Now I've taken it as my superpower. Like, whenever I want, I use my ethnic minority card, and then other times I have my British card, like now. But you use the cards that you've been given. With war, unfortunately, they've been given a very poor hand. So you need to know how to be able to come out of it. So actually, you realise that actually we're all in the same situation together. There might be some factors that we don't agree on, but collectively we're not happy with what's going on. So actually there needs to be people that come into society that go in and be like, look, this is how we really come together. We understand that we may not have the same religion, anything or whatever, but we want a better life. And that is the main thing. In war, or prevention of war, you have to unify people. And unfortunately, there are loads of proxy wars that are going on that focus on dividing people. And that's the best way, divide and conquer. It's the way to get more money and economy within the world. War is the biggest trade. Sorry, it's so negative.
So maybe about your country. So we have to repeat, and especially the international community, because I'm sure that all Ukrainians are convinced that Ukraine is still suffering a violation of its integrity, territorial integrity. That's the first thing. Secondly, we all want Donbass back to Ukraine authority. Thirdly, I would say that when you start peace talk, you have to make a compromise. It's impossible without a compromise, because when I listen to some people, they say, we want Donbass back and we will give nothing to the rebels. Impossible. So, if you look at the Dayton Peace Agreement after the war in former Yugoslavia, where these agreements, Dayton, were signed by 3 political leaders. So, Milosevic, the former Serb president, who was a criminal, a war criminal. Franjo Tuđman, the Croat president, who was a nationalist. And Bakir Izetbegovic, who was, well, I would say a populist. But they reached an agreement. And this Dayton agreement are not perfect. Still now, we have problems with Dayton agreement. But with this Dayton agreement, we reach the end of the war in former Yugoslavia. And that's maybe the most important. So, and that's what we call, what's the price of peace? And it's important. So we really have to evaluate what's the price of peace. And now, in Donbass, you have more than 13,000 victims. And we have to stop it as soon as possible. That's the priority.
Well, basically, what conflict actually is, you have to look into it. Conflict basically arises when there's a difference of opinion amongst people, amongst organizations, and nations at large. So, nowadays people are going for stable peace. And that's a terminology that was devised by Kenneth Boulding. He's a professor of economics in the University of Colorado in 1978. And I quote, what he meant by it is that a situation in which the probability of war is so small that it does not really enter into the calculations of any of the people involved. So, and the other concept is like relation between states in which neither employ any force on any dispute. So as long as we respect each other's opinions, we add inclusivity, accept diversity, we accept difference of opinion, that's how we can cover up and cope up with the conflicts going around. There are a number of disputes going around the world. You must be aware of all those. So what we need is the will to cover and discuss them deliberately to cope up conflicts and end up into peace. So I think we need to respect each other's opinions. As far as you youngsters are concerned, that's the most important point, that you accept cultural diversity, you accept inclusivity, you accept each other's opinion, you have the freedom of speech to say something, you accept And that's how we make linkages, we make bonds. Because such conferences, they are amalgamation of young people from different walks of life. And that's create an international and intercultural harmony. And such events does prevail peace. And you tend to share your success stories. You learn from each other's mistakes. So this is also one step towards covering up the various conflicts that you can share with each other. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable panelists. And now I'd like to enlarge our discussion with a Q&A session. Dear guests, we have 10 minutes for your questions. So whoever wants, whoever likes to ask our panelists. Oh, wow. So I think we'll gather 2 questions each row and then we'll answer 2 by 2. So please, the first one.
Hi, my name is Bilal. I'm from Boston. I have a question so anyone can answer. What's your view on fake news recently with the new technological age? We have a lot of media, a lot of information. But how can we separate, how do we know which one is the right information and which one is wrong? Especially recently in the United States because of Trump. And the investigation is still ongoing. People are saying that it's because of fake news. So how do we protect ourselves from fake news?
Okay, thank you. And one more question. Yes, third row.
A question to Mr. Ambassador about the conflict in eastern Ukraine. So it has been lasting for 5 years, and there were some attempts to reach an agreement, like the Minsk agreement or the Steinmeier formula, but all of this has failed. And what is your opinion on why has no agreement been reached so far? Even that a lot of times we try to do this and fail. Why so?
Okay, so we have 2 questions on fake news and war in Donbass. The floor is yours.
Thank you for your question about fake news. It's very important. So, you know, when I start my career, I had to find information, more and more information. Now, my big problem, and all diplomats, it's to select the good information. We receive too many information, and you're right, we receive fake information, fake news, and it's very difficult to see it. So, you know, that's another aspect of social media, so propaganda. And some, say, propaganda agencies are very smart. I will not mention the name, you know some of them, and they are very smart. So, and you have also information agency from big countries, so they are very smart too. So we have to manage this, and it's not always easy. Yeah, true. And so regarding the Minsk agreement, why I didn't say that the former government or the former president lost 5 years. That's not what I say. But I think that in peace process and in diplomacy, we have what we call momentum. And I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that now we have maybe a momentum. And we don't have to lose this momentum. That's why I decide, and I tell it everywhere, to support the current government and the current president of Ukraine. What he's doing now is a political risk for him. Of course, if you look at the poll now, he was elected by, if I remember, 72% of the Ukrainian people. So 1 month ago, or 3 weeks ago, he still had 64%. Now, the last poll, 52%. That's exactly what the former president of Colombia said. When you start a peace process, you will lose a part of the support of the people. And I think that now the government, the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian president, they took this risk. Yeah. And I really think that they are right. They are right, but we must be careful. And there are some rules. And the rules, again, I repeat it, is the first rule is integrity of Ukraine.
I was just going to add to the fake news question. I think there are certain aspects of fake news which is quite interesting. So far in history, we've just completely trusted whatever we've heard. But yet, day-to-day life, when someone's going to speak to you, you're not always completely trusting of what they say. So I think we're getting to a point where we understand two aspects. Firstly, the reputation of the newspaper. So a friend comes over and says some gossip. You know them to be a massive gossip and they lie about everything. So you're like, wow, take it with a pinch of salt. Similar with newspapers. At the same time, if you see so many newspapers saying similar things, but things have changed, as a profession of research, you see the thematic correlations. So what are correlated here? So there is maybe a disturbance, okay, but they're saying how it's being done. Not all of them do the same thing. And then, so you'd have to use your own judgment. Unfortunately, this is now where it's going to. And then you'll go to the next part where if you meet anyone that's from there, you can ask an actual opinion. But even then, they may be biased from their own propaganda that they've received. So everything is, you take everything with a pinch of salt and use your own judgment. But my flatline rule is basically, if there is news of some sort of death or massacre of this or that, take it that the literal. The reasons behind it may be something different. Propaganda of what people have said, that's when you have to think about really what's going on. Like Trump, there are so many things that he possibly could and couldn't have said, and I have no idea if a lot of it is true or not, but unfortunately his reputation is not the best. So I do take it with a pinch of salt if, what is being said. But this is a point where we have to use our judgment. Similar with body language and face-to-face, we have to do that ourselves. And I think that is where we come with newspapers and their own reputation.
Fake news is basically a huge area where you're looking at. I mean, every technology has its advantages and disadvantages. And social media is one of those that there's a long way that we can cater fake news in the near future, because they're always light at the end of the tunnel. So we are the best judge. I mean, you are the best judge to differentiate between what is good news or fake news. Because if you have the knowledge and the courage to differentiate, then it's probably fake news will be there, and there must be scrutinization on the social media as well as to what to give the news to the audience or not. So near future, I think there might be a check on it. So the point is that you're the best judge. Okay.
Okay, we can take another two questions from the audience. Yes, this lady, and then...
Okay. So, Your Excellency, please let me ask you rather different question as for me. How do you think, how can Ukraine nowadays really peacefully integrate the people from Donbass, as almost 30 or maybe even 40% of people there, they have Russian passports, not Ukrainian anymore. The system of education is directed to Russian system of education, not to Ukrainian anymore. And even students, they are receiving Russian diplomas, not Ukrainian anymore. So what can be the peaceful way to integrate people once again to this country?
Okay, thank you. And the second question, please.
Thank you so much for your presence, Your Excellency, and other panelists. My first question falls into what is the role of international law? What is the role of international law and the strength of the UN in the peace process? And secondly, after experiencing a century of slaughter, statistically now, evidence conveys that we have experienced less violence and death than ever. So as we're about to enter this period of long peace per se, what is the role then of the private sector? Because we've discussed the role of education, the power of the youth, and the government. So to conclude, the role of the UN, international law, and the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. I suppose we will have 3 questions now and a kind of bombardment at our ambassador. But I suppose concerning the first question, we also can take comments from our other panelists, because from their point of view, from their perspective, what is the way to integrate Donbass? So please, whoever want to start.
So you're right, of course. The reconciliation in Donbass will be very difficult. That's sure, and that's why we don't have time, and we have to do it as soon as possible. But don't forget that there are many displaced persons here in Kiev. You know, every week I meet people from Donbass, and they tell me the same story. They are here, but the parents or the grandparents stay because they have no choice, and they stay there because they have no choice. And of course, the Republic of Luhansk or Donetsk are not democratic. Are you sure that people still living in Donetsk and Luhansk have any choice? I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm not sure that they choose. That's this Russian passport is free choice. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, because I talk almost every week with people from Donbass. I have good friends here. I'm working with NGO and people coming from Donbass. And they tell me the same story. They tell me, we left, but our parents couldn't leave because they are retired, they have a house, and they have no choice. They stayed. But when I talk with the people from Donbass living and working here in Kiev or in other cities, in Dnipro, in Odessa or in Lviv, they say the same. So I'm sure, well, no, I'm not sure, but I hope when the Donetsk and Luhansk will come back to Ukraine, I believe that people will choose democracy. When you have the choice between dictatorship and no, we have dictatorship in Luhansk and Donetsk, and not only dictatorship, we have a real gangster. The head now there are real gangster. We know that. When they will have the choice between this system and a democratic system, okay, it's not perfect. The democracy is never perfect. They will choose democracy. That's my hope. So, now about the United Nations are already here involved in the process. You have a lot of UN agencies like UNHCR or UNDP working in the contact line or in the Donbass area. You also have OSCE working, so it's a part of, well, it's not UN, it's a part of the international community. So, and of course, our embassy, we are working with the UN agency. So we have a meeting together, we go together. When I went to the contact line, I was with the UN, by the way. So now the private sector is very important too, of course, and the civil society. If we want to rebuild Donbass, we need the private sector and civil society. That's true. You're right.
So my input with Donbass and the integration. I'm really sorry. I don't really know much about all the stuff that's going on, but I'll focus on the integration. When you have to integrate into different society or things that, you know, a disputed land that come and go, you've got so many different aspects of it. So it really does, it's a whole tier system. I know I keep saying it, but it really truly is. Like you have the government and the economy, and really people don't care about whatever government rules as long as they have the best life they have. No one cares, really. If they feel that it changes and it impacts them, then obviously they're going to they get annoyed. Then the second part is the cultural and philosophical part of their own identity. And so back in the day, like when there was no borders, you didn't really have this dispute between identity or category of I'm this or I'm that, because you just were an entity, you were a being. And the more that we isolate or categorize ourselves, it shows two things. That firstly, we globally, no one really knows their identity. We're trying to put ourselves in such a small little bracket in a box because we don't know what advantages that will give us. I'm this, I'm that, and like even put in, you know, the best example is gender. Like so many people are like, do you know what, men are like this, women are like that. Well, actually, no, we're all people. There are good and bad people in every group. There are idiots in both, and there are intelligent people in both. And so in regarding to country and culture, the best way to integrate or to understand is to look at the philosophy of people there. I don't know why every time I speak, I can't speak. But look at the philosophy there and look at how people want to live, because you have traditions within that community. And then some relate probably more towards Russia, some relate more towards Ukraine. And then even then, the differentiation between the two, what is the balance? And then it then goes back to economy. What is the best type? So the way to unify and integrate people is to understand the other point of view, to understand what's going on in the other sect and what is the difference. So then the difference shows there actually is no difference between people. It's just a different, maybe, comprehension of it. Sometimes it's language, sometimes it's an environmental factor. But but to integrate is to understand, is to be able to be open-minded, to see what possible solutions can be. And I can't say, because I'm not there, and I'm not a part of the people that want to be integrated, or don't know anything about it, but it's to be able to speak, and then be able, once the dialogue is completely open, then you can create a way to integrate that is better for both. And you, like we were saying, there's a balance here to understand one another. I hope that helped. Regarding the UN law and things in this regard, it does depend on the UN as a global governance body what they actually want to do. UN law, it depends if you want it to become a police factor of the world. Law, to a certain degree, they should focus on the purest concepts of how to be a human being. You know, good actions, good thoughts, good speech, and I think a lot of that goes towards the main concept of being a human, how to be the best, and a lot of that goes with environmental factors, this and that, you know. So the law, to be able to be cross-culturally diverse, needs to be as broad but as focused as possible, which is very hard. But the UN has struggled with that. They struggle with implementing policies and the compliance of it. So they are in their own bracket of struggle, to be fair. And they've had a few restructures in the last few years to try to make it as efficient and effective as possible. It's a great system, and I'm in love with the UN, but it's not evolving as we need to, but it should be. It should focus that way. Regarding the private sector to help keep peace is a very interesting one, because a lot of the private sector kind of manifests a very traditional biased opinion. Because once you're in, it's like a school network. You go in and then suddenly you go into a stereotype once again, and people create that stereotype because no one's correcting it. In all the other sectors, you have to be able to be different, or you have to be a certain way, because that's the process of that system. Private sector, it's its own entity. You can do and be however you want. So there might be a form of a governing body that needs to maintain the way that the private sector works. But unfortunately there isn't, because that's the whole point of private sector. So again, it's whoever, because we're the younger ones here, we will be the leaders. So it's our influence and our next steps that could change this in the private sector.
Well, I'm I'm not a student of international relations, so I may not be able to answer your question regarding the. I hope they have answered your question. My apologies for that. But as far as your question is concerned regarding the role of UN in building peace with the youth and private sector, well, basically, UN is a huge body and seriously working towards achieving peace. Like, they are working to prevent conflicts, helping parties to achieve peace, and they have peacekeeping missions as well. UN has recently started doing projects with the private sector in various countries. Like, they have this Peace Solidarity Fund that they do with the various organizations in the countries, where you come up with peace workshops and activities in the education sector. Then there is United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. That's another thing that they are doing, where they include cultural diversity, achieving peace. Then you have peace achieving through music, documentaries, movies. There's another aspect of UN. And so there are a lot of things the UN is doing in order to involve youth and private parties, to like organizations to come up and interact with the UN thing. Because there's a long way to go, and obviously if you shoot at the moon and you miss, you probably end up into stars. So that's the way forward. So I think there is a long way, so you will probably achieve peace with UN activities. Thank you. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we need to wrap it all up because we're missing our schedules, and coordinators will probably hunt me down somewhere for wrapping up our schedule. But nevertheless, I am very grateful to our panelists. I'm very grateful for our audience for quiet and fruitful interaction. So let us thank our panelists for discussion. Yes, but they are putting me in risk. Look at those eyes.
You have the diplomatic immunity. So I only want to say that you have a young independent country. You have a young democracy. You have to believe in your country. You are also welcoming students for many countries. So you have a real future. So you have to believe in your country. Of course, we are not sure for the peace process, but what is important now is to see what you have in common. That's the most important. And what you say, so what you have in common. So don't see the difference, because diversity is also one. So, and for example, the language issue for me is not an issue, because you are all Ukrainian, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Excellency. And dear guests, if you'd like to answer some more questions, I suppose you may find our speakers near the coffee machine during the break. Thank you once again.
Thank you for this panel talk, guys. We're gonna continue our summit without break right now. The break is supposed and scheduled for 1 p.m. So please, if you're available, please stay here. Don't leave the summit immediately like, oh my gosh, I'm in a rush. So we're gonna continue with the peace conflict story prepared by, thank you, you can take this. Prepared by one of our delegates, Mr. Mustafa Vishya. He was preparing for his presentation, and we expect him to present today.
Hello. So, hello everyone. I'm Mustafa from Kurdistan region, the north part of Iraq. I'm so happy to be in Ukraine, to be honest, because since the day before yesterday I arrived here. Whenever I say I'm from Kurdistan, everyone knows where is Kurdistan. Nowadays I live in Hungary. Whenever I say I'm from Kurdistan, they say, oh, Kazakhstan. Well, nowadays they say, yeah, Kazakhstan is a very developed country close to Russia, so I'm from there. So glad to be here. My talk is going to be somehow kind of like continuation of the panel. Before starting my presentation, my talk, actually I just would like to add to terminology. So when it was asked, what's peace? Peace is divided into two parts, mainly. I would like to add that terminology. We call it positive peace and negative peace. What is positive peace and what is negative peace? Negative peace is the priority to stop a war, to stop the killings, to stop any possible fight. So for example, as it was mentioned in Ukraine, or in places like Syria, Yemen, and other war-torn areas. What is positive peace, which is the second type? It comes after the negative peace. Peace itself is a long-term process, it's a never-ending process. So for example, even we need peace in Scandinavian countries, we need peace like in Germany, but what type of peace? We call it something like gender equality or equal opportunities among all the races, religions, and etc. So just I wanted to add that. So to start my speech, my colleague is going to control the PowerPoint. If I do this, means click, okay? Thank you. So, let's do it. So, I just start showing you some pictures. Whenever we think about conflict, what comes to our mind is violence, destruction, and some kind of image. This is an image from Syria, okay, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Anyone likes those pictures? No, right? It's ugly. Yeah, no one likes them. So unfortunately, they are as a result of violence, fighting, wars, which is kind of conflict. Okay, I'll talk about conflict in a minute. Let's move to some other pictures. Scandinavian countries. Okay, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, beautiful architecture, no destruction, right? Happiness, right? Gender equality, women, men, the same, nice. Okay, all together, nature, peaceful, right? Everyone likes those pictures? Okay, it's better. Peace is nice, it's beautiful. So there's a Chinese saying life goal and contradiction are inseparable. Conflict prevention, preventing conflict is meaningless. So we hear like preventing conflict, stopping conflict. Actually, we cannot prevent conflict. We cannot stop it. Conflict is like something in our nature. It's something very normal. Now, most probably we are going to have many conflicts between me and you, among ourselves. But the important, how we are going to transform this conflict. Are we going to fight because of our different opinions? Or we are going to transform it to something better, to peaceful, like to learn, to a peaceful debate, a knowledgeable debate. This is the important thing. Not to stop the conflict, but to process or transform the conflict in what direction you are going to take the conflict. So, Johan Galtung, he's a Norwegian philosopher. He's named mostly the father of peace studies. Says the opposite of peace is violence. The statement peace is absence of violence. So whenever you have a violence, means you don't have a peace, and if there is a peace, you have means you don't have violence, means you avoided violence. So if you want the peace, you have to deal with the violence. It's something really important to deal with the violence. Always we have to look at the roots of the problems in order to achieve a solution. If we want to achieve something, if we have a greater aim. So let's move to Johan Galtung is introducing valence triangle. It's his theory. He's just dividing valence, talking about valence. And this is the valence triangle, actually. So we always see like this type of violence which is visible. You see someone is killing someone else. You see the fight, the oral or the verbal violence. Someone is swearing. Someone is using some bad words against someone else. So this is what we see. But we cannot solve this issue if we just see what's visible, which is manifested. We have to go to the roots of the violence. And he divides violence into 3 types: structural violence, cultural violence, and lastly direct violence, which is the visible part we see. The invisible part is the structural violence sense first. So, for example, the violence between 2 groups, okay, or the global unfairness between 2 countries, 2 religions, 2 ethnicity. And even he takes that further. For example, if there's an earthquake in Japan, in a developed country, how many victims we will have? But if the same earthquake happens in an African country, let's say, or less developed country, what will be the damage? Of course, it will be more and more. So he calls this structural violence, which is global unfairness. And after that, we have the second type of violence, which he names it cultural violence or symbolic violence, as Pierre Bourdieu names that. Symbolic violence or cultural violence is our attitude towards this global unfairness. What we think, what we do, how do we react. So mostly, even if we reject this type of violence, we don't resist to stop it because we start to believe that we can do nothing. So for example, the conflict, the ongoing invisible violence between, let's say, Russia and America, we believe that this is the nature, it's natural, this conflict to continue. And of course, as a result of these two types of violence, when it starts between 2 groups, we cannot do anything as humanity, as cultures, as society. It will lead to a direct violence, which is a fight, it's a war. People are killed, or like, you know, the wars, which is a proxy war happening in places like Syria, Yemen, and in many other places. So let me move, like, you know, just to wrap up my talk, because I was told I have only 10 minutes. Just few points. So I would say no for stopping conflict, just for transferring them. As I said, like, you cannot prevent conflict. It's impossible. We have conflict against ourselves, against others, even against nature. The important is how can we improve ourselves through these conflicts in order to achieve something better. Looking for similarities rather than differences, it was already like mentioned, it's very important as human beings. Of course, we have to look at the differences. It's important to see how different we are in order to make our lives more colorful. But it's more important to look at the similarities, shared values as human beings, as global citizens. So we all have responsibilities to combat violence. If we combat violence, means we know how to transform the conflict in order to process into a peaceful conclusion. And peace is built, it's not made. Like, peace is an endless process. It's continuing, it's never-ending thing. So we have to know how to build it step by step, steadily. Then we have to continue to keep that peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we are welcome to represent our Young Leaders panel talk, our moderator and speakers.
So, ladies and gents, welcome one more time for the Global Peace Summit, Kiev. And it's really difficult for me to find the right words after so many nice speeches, performances, and panel discussions. And I promise I will not even try to outshine them. My name is Anna, I'm from Hungary, I'm a youth leader and youth worker there. And this time I will be the moderator for the next panel discussion. It will be a young leaders panel. And I would like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves one by one.
Hello everyone. I'm Mishal Shah. I am from Pakistan, but right now I'm doing my master's from Denmark. So I'm doing my master's in innovation and entrepreneurship, unlike most of the people here who are doing something in international relations and development and policy and economics. So yeah, I have a business background, but shortly I would like to introduce myself as someone who wants to create change and want to impact people's lives. Yeah, thank you.
So hello everybody, my name is Hajar Issa. I'm from Khartoum, Sudan, but basically right now I'm based in Austria, Vienna, and I'm an experienced translator and interpreter with a history of working in peace promotion and education promotion as well. As from an early age, I've always dreamed about helping my people back in Darfur. I mean, I come from a conflict zone area where my basically parents come from, but I would really hope to make a change pretty soon, hopefully.
Hello everybody, my name is Tiago, I'm from Brazil. At the moment I'm living in Sweden. I'm doing a Master in Peace and Development work in a university called Linnaeus. It's in the south of Sweden. I'm also working volunteering in a United Nations Association back in the city. It's UNA Sweden, but they have a specific location in the city that's called Växjö. And yeah, let's share some knowledge.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for remaining here with us, because if you leave, it's going to be terrible for us, so please do remain. My name is Itgelt. I'm from Mongolia. I study and live in Hungary, and I'm doing my bachelor's degree in international relations. So I hope you'll get to know each other.
I would thank our panelists for self-introduction, and now we will start with some questions that I consider some really burning and hot topic questions nowadays, not just in Europe but all over the world. And with the first question, I would like to turn to Ms. Mishal Shah, and because unfortunately nowadays peace is a luxury, and I would like to know how young people can be a key instrument to counter anti-peace organs.
Okay, so just to rephrase the question is how young people, you and me, what can we do to counter the anti-peace organs which have been budding in the recent years. So I would like to start this with a question from all of you that have you ever been a victim, or have you ever encountered something from, or have you ever been part of a violent or hate crime before? Can you raise your hands if you... Okay, right. Well, for those who haven't been a part of, or haven't been a victim of that before, I would like you all to imagine for a moment that you are at a place where you are being, where your caste, religion, your identity is being under constant threat, and you don't know what to do, and you can't even breathe with free, you can't even have fresh air of, where you can feel like yourself, and you can have your own opinions and everything. But so it's like that to live under a place where there are violent and hate crimes budding around you, and yeah, we can't imagine living in that place because we haven't been through that. But for people who go through these things daily, it's really hard for them. Another thing is that according to, I would like to state a fact here, that according to recent FBI reports, violent and hate crimes, they have been surging in the and they have been on the highest they have been the highest in the past 16 years in specifically USA. I would like to go USA because it has been budding in the recent years, and the crime against I can't even get into it, like maybe against Latinos and transgenders, they have been they're crazily on the surge, right? So the question here is that the question is not what should we do. It's we all know, and it's really obvious. Just say that we should all combat violence and spread peace and build peace. But the question is how. I mean, we all want to know how, because we are sitting here and we read these fancy posts that just say that try to build peace, combat violence. Okay, and then you're like, okay, so what are we supposed to do? Like, you all are sitting here. How do you start fighting peace and violence, and how do you fight hate crimes? So I'll throw another question before I get into the how part. That how many of you know how hate groups or violent groups they are formed? Does anyone of you know how hate groups are formed? Okay, so.
Social media, maybe.
Exactly, yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Exactly. Brainwashing, social media, yeah. Exactly, yeah. Yeah, you all of you are right. So these hate groups, they're not formed like this. They're formed over time. And you might not know that you are also a part of a hate group. And right now I can say, even sitting here, the hate groups can form within us as well. The moment you start using hate expression against anyone, that's the point where you have formed the hate group. That's what the hate groups aren't. Famously the ISI or Al Qaeda, because they're just famous because they're spreading hate and crimes and everything. They can be anyone. They can be among us as well. So again, like he told about the social media, that how, and I think our last panel discussion, Diplomat's discussion as well, how social media has played a really important role in becoming the propaganda machine in the history of mankind, where you don't know that when you're reading some comments on some pictures, you don't know you're also becoming a part of that hate ideology, and you're like, oh yeah, that person is right, I hate that as well. You just say that, or you just think about this thing, and at that point, snap. You just snap because you don't know that you have become a part of that hate ideology. That's how dangerous social media is. That's how hate crimes are surging among us. So the question is how. Now I'll get to the how part. That what can you do when you see these things happening around you? First of all, of course, stop it. Okay, now this is again how again, Michelle, how do you stop it? When you see someone talking about these things, or for example, someone's like, I don't like it, just don't, instead of going to the extreme approach and hating that thing, find the root cause of why does that person hating it. For example, if you're living in Ukraine, all the Ukrainian people here, there's hate going on between two sides of the country. Why is that so? Like, ask yourself, why is that so? And how can we start taking steps in order to prevent it? And now we can also say that, okay, government can take these steps, government can also introduce training programs at the primary and secondary level, but what can you do when you're here studying in this university? Maybe just get up. If you see that there is some kind of hate in your surroundings, just go out. Ask your faculty, can we initiate a program, or maybe a training classes on anti-bias education? Maybe it's just a thing that you gotta be proactive instead of just seeing that what our government is doing. We want you to do something. I think the how part is what you can right now do. So I think that's where youth comes, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I think, yeah.
I would like to say thank you to Ms. Michelle Shah for enlightening us. And I have noticed here a very interesting thing, because for a short time we tackled a very important matter right now, which is happening everywhere, because we stepped into the footsteps of migrants and refugees. But since our time is limited, but the material for discussion is long, I would invite you all to focus to the next question, which is why youth is an easy prey to engage in violence and hatred extremism. And I would turn to Ms. Hagar Aisa Abdallah from Sudan.
Basically, I would start by the word violence itself. It's such a huge word, but we basically all know it as this behavior that we basically all hate, definitely. Is there any one of you that really likes violence in all of its types? I would say basically nobody does. But young people are basically the ones who are simply easier to get affected by any acts, or just to get affected by just friends, for example. One of you might tell the other one, there is this place that I just would like to go to. Do you want to go? Okay, the other one might say, yeah, of course, let's just do it. Maybe he or she does not want to do it, but just because she was simply affected by the way that they just expressed it to her, and it seemed very interesting, or maybe not. Maybe they're not even interested in this, but they just do it because they just got affected by it. So this is a very easy example for this. So basically, I would still refer back to the 21st century, where this terroristic attack took place in South Asia, and basically the higher amount of participants were from young people. So this would be reflected to their society or maybe their background about it. But still, I wouldn't say that this act of brainwashing and radicalization is still an enough answer for why young people should really participate into such acts. I would really call for that, a lot of actions should be taken towards this. A lot of sessions for making young people aware of each and every action that they will take. If it was a positive act, it will make a positive impact. And if it was a negative one, then it will definitely destroy the world. So people should be really aware of the steps that they are taking. And that's all I can say about this part.
Thank you for Ms. Abdallah for breaking it down for us and for the empowering answer. And let's continue with the third question. And I would ask this to Mr. Itegrat Batu here from Mongolia to explain us how important is youth engagement in policymaking process and what the impact of it.
So, answering the question, it is very important. Why? First of all, the future relies on youth, because the youth determines the future. As mentioned before, the dictators die, the time goes, the war ends, and there comes the youth, the next generation always. And when it comes to engagement, we should ask and stress on how do we engage. Of course, youth, we are young people, we don't have experience. There's always the older generation who has to determine, but we have to be involved to know, to raise awareness between each other, and then therefore to implement when the time comes to us. And when it comes to impact, we have a great example these days that to do with the youth involvement, engagement in policy making, that you all know Swedish activist Greta Thunberg. What is she doing? She's everywhere, everyone knows her, and her impact on us, her impact on the policy making in the world affairs, it is tremendous, it is amazing. So youth engagement is very important, as we determine first of all the future, and as we basically determine the future. So that's what I believe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, especially for keeping your answer short. Thank you very much for your contribution and for your energy. For the next question, I will turn to Mr. Tiago Soares from Brazil, and I would like to ask him how the fifth generation of war is affecting young people and how we can combat.
Okay, the first thing that I wanted to explain is what's a 50th generation of war. So 50th generation of war is actually non-state actors, so it could be like guerrilla or terrorist groups, that they are fighting against a specific government, but they don't have like a clear reason to do that. And it's actually funny because, for example, you can, even in the list that I was checking, you can put, for example, Al-Qaeda or PKK, for example, in the Kurdish part of Syria. And yes, basically I wanted to say that, so that's the reason about the 50th generation conflict, that it's basically agents that are against the government, that are fighting like government, even though they don't have a reason. So it's even interesting because you can put, for example, the Arabic Spring on it, even though definitely you cannot compare the Arabic Spring with Al-Qaeda with other things because it's totally different ideology and ideas as well. Regarding the combat that I can see, especially coming from the youth, is that, I mean, I can give several cases, but I can say, for example, if you think like Cuba, Venezuela, Colombia, they had insurgent groups, they have guerrilla groups that now are part of the government. If you see like the Cuban, the Fidel Castro brothers, they came from a guerrilla group. In Venezuela, the Chavez and now the Maduro, even though that, yeah, we have a lot of polemic with them. But if you talk about the background, they were also an insurgent group. They were like a communist insurgent group. And then definitely after they became part of the government, but they were totally militarized. They were totally against the government in that specific time. You can see also, for example, one good case that I found was actually about Palestine, because you have Yasser Arafat. Yes. And it's really interesting because way before he was recognized by US and other places like as a really peace making person, like a really important person to the world, he was considered like a terrorist. So this is the thing that you always change. And it's even interesting, for example, I went to the Global Peace Summit in Kurdistan, and we have also the Kurdish colleague there. And we were talking, and it's interesting because, for example, the northern part of Iraq, they were, I mean, the government now, because they are autonomous region, so they have their own government. They were an insurgent group. They were fighting until 91. They were against the government. They were killing people and etc. But after some peace making in that region, Iraq recognized them and give that autonomy to that specific region. And it's really interesting because you see that they changed from a group that was totally against the government as part of the government. It's like the government, even though there is a lot of conflict between Iraq government and Kurdish government, it's kind of understanding one another, because also in Iraq they have a Kurdish, one of the persons there, forgot because I don't remember which one, he's Kurdish. And it's interesting because, especially in the case of Syria, on the Rojava, they have a terrorist group that's called the PKK, that they are fighting the Turkish there. And it's interesting because they have the same goals as the Kurdish in Iraq. So, I mean, they are fighting because they want that goal to also have their autonomy, etc. But at the moment, they are considered by US and Russia as terrorist groups. Yeah, I would say mostly the integration process, so make these groups also have their rights respected. I would say that definitely is the key that I see to integrate, especially with the youth of those places.
Thank you very much for your explanation and for bringing the topic closer to us through examples from Latin America and from the Middle East. With the next question, I will turn to our panelists to give their opinion about how we can unite young people and counter violent extremism and all kinds of discrimination.
So uniting young people is very important because we need diversity in every field when it comes to decision making, when it comes to any kind of organizational activities. The diversity is needed. We need people from different backgrounds, we need artists, we need politicians, we need sociologists, psychologists, philosophers, and so on. Therefore, with this huge diversity, but through creating a diversity, we can achieve something that in one piece. I mean, we can accomplish something. So, some of you might know, there are forums that involve that bring lots of young people together in one place. in order for them to integrate, to know each other's differences. At the same time, we live in a world that is full of different cultures, and these cultures are very different fundamentally, foundationally from each other, and they cross each other. They have to interact with each other by somehow by time. Knowing the difference of each other is the main, the crucial, most important aspect of our lives. That by knowing each other, by knowing the differences that you and I have, we can achieve something in the future together. So lots of organizations, as I said, the forums, the individuals, the companies, and United Nations, etc. They bring young people together, right? They give scholarships, like for ourselves here. We are here by a scholarship. We are funded by this Peace Chain international organization. The main purpose is us being here is the answer to that question, I believe.
And so I totally agree with what you said, and just to add to that point, I think that eliminating discrimination among us, if you talk on the grassroots level, I think this is something that starts at a really, really young age, when we are just, in our first or second grade, and this is something that has to do a lot with how we are being educated, our education systems. The discrimination that has been inculcated in us, it can only be removed if not. I'm not saying that it's just the government's responsibility to start the programs at a very young age, where children actually learn how to, empathize, skills like soft skills, how to interact with each other, how they can reduce aggressive behavior, how they can reduce hate among each other. It starts from a really grassroots level, when we're just these little kids and we're playing with each other, although we have passed that age. But what we can do is, our coming generation, for our kids, hopefully if we survive by that time, so we can actually start considering how we, for the coming generation, since we are going to be the future leaders, hopefully, so we can introduce these programs in order to remove the discrimination for the coming generation, so that if the situation that is now, the hate and discrimination crimes that are being happen right now against transgenders and Latinos and immigrants and asylum seekers and undocumented people from Mexico maybe, so it can be then removed, I think. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I think I'll also just add a little bit of a note to what she said. I totally agree to the point of that the younger generations are basically affected by the society, and the education that they get basically will be an amazing effect on uniting them as soon as they grow up. So I'll just keep it very simple and say, like, there are a lot of open opportunities for a lot of young people right nowadays. In the past, it was not as much as right now. But all of them, they should just like break a leg and take the chance and make all the differences and the changes that you can just make.
I would go a little back of what was speaking before. So I believe that definitely like integration. So even if you have people that believe in A, I mean, they also need to see that they can talk to a person that believes in B. So I think that's also the point of people understanding that even if you don't like somebody, I mean, if you definitely see that that person don't have the same idea that you have, you need to understand that that's diversity, that's part of democracy, and you need to understand to live on that. I would say as per part of the young people, and as per part of the government, I would say as well, like improve policies to implement this thing about diversity and make different groups, especially like extremist groups, to talk to one another and understand, because I mean, I don't think that sometimes if somebody have an idea, it's totally bad, or other have a totally different idea, it's also bad. I mean, I have a lot of friends that totally disagree with what they believe, but it's interesting because we can talk, and it's even better because we can build something different. So I think that definitely that's the step for young people. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all for your answers, and it really makes me genuinely glad to have 4 young people here who are true motivation and inspiration and a school example of peace building. And with this we reached our last but not least questions. which I would like also to ask from all of them, because we reached to a crucial point where we would like to know what every religion teach about peace and justice. There's a slight confusion. It was not planned, but part of the live show.
I can't talk on behalf of every religion, but I would really like to talk about my own religion. I'm a Muslim, and I practice Islam. So when I say Islam, people are like, okay. I don't know, because that's how it is. Like, you know, okay, so this, just a small incident, not an incident, when I just arrived at the Ukrainian airport. Yeah, so I just arrived at the Ukrainian airport, and I was just talking to Tiago, because we to the same flight, and I was like, Tiago, whenever I arrive to some airport, they always, when they see the Pakistani passport, because it's the worst, and when you search among the passports, it comes in one of the worst countries, passport from the countries, yeah. So I was like, they always, you know, they're always looking at me like this, or they just, you know, separate me out from the line, and I'm like, okay, shit, I'm going, or I mean, these Ukrainian soldiers, they're gonna kill me, or I'm not gonna go alive. Just tell my parents that I'm not coming alive. Anyway, so I was at the, so it was my turn. I'm like, okay, so here's the airport, and he's like, you're traveling for the first time? I was like, go with him. I was like, okay. So I went into another room, and for like 10 minutes, they interrogated me. Okay, that's a security procedure, I understand that. But sometimes this thing inculcates fear in your heart that, okay, what, have I done something wrong? Is there something wrong with the way maybe I look? Is this because I'm a Muslim? Because I am from another religion? Maybe our religion is different? It's just these small things that makes you feel like an outsider sometimes. And it's just this, that when you hear the word Islam, and the word jihad, just sacrifice, they have been taken wrongly by the terrorist organizations all around the world. And what we see on social media, and what has been twisting our ideologies when we see these bomb attacks by these terrorist organizations, that's what comes in our mind. Now this has a long history, history of why did this happen, how in the name of Islam these organizations started doing things. I won't go into detail, but we are all human beings, and I think every religion has these beliefs that, you know, spread peace, be kind, do not hate each other. I think every religion, I don't know if you practice any or not, most of the people here will, most of you guys might not practice any religion, but that's just, these are the values that are in every person's mind who don't even practice a religion. And when you ask a person who doesn't even practice it, and that person is going to be like, you know, I don't practice any religion, but I do believe in kindness. And we should be kind to each other. And I think that, you know, some people believe in karma. Be good to others, people are going to be good to you. Do bad to others, it's going to come back to you. And you're gone. Okay, so it's like, it's something that I believe as well. And I think that every religion, when we talk about peace and justice, that's what religion is about. Just be kind to each other. Yeah, and make outsiders feel like they're not outsiders. Do not separate them out of the passport control line. Okay, no, that's something that, anyway. So it's just, yeah, that's what I have to say about this. That my religion and all the other religions, I think that they all tell us the same thing, and I think it starts from you all. That if you feel that someone, for example, some of you are who are from Ukraine, you see us and you are here, and I really thank you all to come here to make us feel welcome, because it just makes us feel like that, okay, wow, I mean, we are not really outsiders, although we are not from here, but it feels good to be heard by you people who are from here, and to not feel like someone who is, sometimes you're like, you don't know their language, what if they're talking bad about us? I mean, it's just like that sometimes. So yeah, it's just these small things that for example, in Pakistan, if someone comes from the outside, we're like foreigners are here, and we'll try to start talking in English because we want to make them feel like they're in their home. They're not an outsider. So that's try to use just an example. Trying to use the common language that everyone understands, so that you're not discriminating. It's related to the previous question as well. When we talk about discrimination, these are just the small acts which makes you not discriminate between people. That's what I have to say. Sorry, I just got a little carried away.
So just to continue what she was saying, was really funny because when we were in the passport, the guy just looked to me and she was like, he's with me, and then I showed the Brazilian passport, and the guy looked to her, looked to the military and just told her, go with him. And then I put the passport, he was looking to me, he looked to her going there, and he was like, okay, you go. And then I waited like, I don't know, 10 minutes. I was like, yeah, crazy. So yeah, regarding this thing about religion, I have a really interesting, it's my own personal belief, but it's quite even interesting thing nowadays, because even I believe in this thing about like freedom of speech or of also religion. So I was born like in a Roman Catholic church, believe family and tradition and etc. And yeah, my country, the vast majority is Catholic, even though everybody's kind of atheist, because it's just fancy to say I'm Catholic. But I faced this thing about like, I like the religion, I like Catholicism, and I had things that I was like, okay, I'm not really sure about that. So it's interesting because I became Buddhist. So I stayed at time as a Buddhist, which actually like really, like people look to me, oh, but the white guy, he's Brazilian, and you're Buddhist, like what the hell? Things like this happen. Welcome to the global world we live in, right? And then after that, I realized as well, like Buddhism doesn't really fit me, but I mean, there is a lot of things that I would appreciate about Buddhism and also Catholicism. So it's interesting because, like, for example, today I have my kind of own belief. I do believe in God, but it's on my own perception. So I feel that definitely it's something that, like, religion is something that you needed to feel pleasure to believe in that thing, It's something that definitely, like, if you feel that your family teach that and you also feel that you agree with that, definitely you can take for you. But also I feel that it's something that's supposed to build peace. And sometimes, as I was talking to my colleagues also yesterday, it's something that you see that becomes more political than actually is something to unite people. And that's the big problem. That's why you see certain groups and other groups like just my belief, my own truth, but no, I don't think there is no truth, and I think that religions, they need to build peace and not war. So I conclude like this. Thank you.
Yeah, I just would like to add also a very small thing to the point that they both added. And I would really say that regardless to what religion that we practice, we should treat each other as humans before we even know what religion that we are. And because basically in the end, all religions will definitely call into peace and justice.
Yeah. I'm going to conclude as well. And so before that, I was born to a Buddhist family, Tibetan Buddhist. But I was raised up, I grew up among Muslims. It's the Islamic society that I grew up. And recently, by choice, I'm a different type of Buddhist. Among the Buddhism, a different branch, completely different concept. And also, I'm Christian Orthodox by choice. And you may have heard lots of different interpretations, the differences among religions, like how they interpret what they say, this group and that group, what they say, all of them, they have differences among, but every religion looks at the one exact same direction, one way or the other way. It's a peace, right? In a heaven or something like the eternal happiness, etc. So all the points here was made to bring you to the individualism, like the personality, how to overcome the religious differences that we have. We are from different religions, but we have to overcome these differences as an individual. Therefore, we can achieve peace. Even though there are differences, although there are differences, every religion points at the one direction. So, terminating the differences, going over our individualistic, this personal identity, we can achieve something, I believe. And sorry for inarticulation.
I think I'm more than grateful, and I really owe a big thank you to our panelists for sharing their knowledge with us. And on a personal note, I would like to add just a line that even though I got no religion, my parents are Buddhist, and I would never see this coming, that in Ukraine, in a panel discussion, out of the 5 of us, 3 having crossroads with Buddhism. And since we are more than good with time management, I'm inviting the audience and the delegates to feel free and to ask questions from the panelists. Yes, please.
What was the worst type of discrimination you faced? And what did it make you realize?
Like in my lifetime, or when I came here, or lifetime? Like, yeah. Okay. So interesting. Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I experience a lot when I go to some parties or these occasional events is that people mostly, they have this. How do I say it so that it doesn't sound wrong? But yeah. Can you just? I'm just gonna remember. Yeah. Okay.
I would basically say I faced a lot of discrimination experiences, but I would rather say, I remember there was a time in which I had to go to this event, and there were a lot of internationals, and they just basically, I'm also a Muslim, so I was just wearing a hijab, and I just stepped in, and I was being, first of all, prejudiced for being African and a Muslim. So it was that was a bunch of things just at one time. And it made me feel really bad because every time I tried to step into a group, they just try to change the subject or just try to step away. And I was what's the problem, people? And then there was a very brave young man who was okay, I'm just gonna be honest with you, but basically people are just prejudicing you because you're African. I'm not trying to be racist, but you're an African and a Muslim. So I was just because I'm an African and a Muslim does not make me someone who is not able to talk to people or not able to participate. So I would say this is one of the prejudicing that I've been facing my whole life. And I have a lot of experiences, but it would just be till tomorrow until I finish all my stories. But I would really hope that this would stop one day when people try to realize not to prejudice someone or to judge someone just depending on their skin color or just because of a sign for a religion that they do or wear. So.
Hi. I would give an example that happened with one of my colleagues. She's from Brazil. We were in one country in Europe. And the fact is, especially with Brazilians, we can look like everybody. And it's quite interesting because, especially for me, people, they just look to me oh, another European guy. I'm oh, Brazilian. What happened? I don't know, I just born like this. But the thing is that, one day I was with this friend, and she had argued with somebody from a specific country in Europe, and the person just, because she looks more Brazilian than I do, the person just told her that she looked like a monkey, and for me it was disgusting. I fight with the person, I was what the hell, Because even though, especially in our country, it's really difficult because, it's kind of I feel especially with race, we don't I don't decide to born a man and a white guy, you know, that's the point. And like, because we are from the same country, like I feel really, really bad about this because she's really like a close friend of mine and she helped me even going to Sweden, etc. And we are really, really like, almost like brother and sister. And then when I saw the situation was horrible, like I tried to fight the guy, but and I thought it was just a person who had a problem, both mentality, because also it's a country that's mixed, so it's really even hard for me this time that I see people like, oh, but you are Caucasian. I say, yeah, but I'm Brazilian, like whatever. Like I have even native Indian if I maybe check my blood. Like I just, you know, I just feel that stupidest thing. So yeah, just want to share because it was really touching for me because also was a close person and dear person for me. So yeah, thank you.
Pardon me, what was the question?
Okay, the question was from her.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was the worst or discrimination you faced or seen?
Okay.
And what did you learn from it?
What I learned from it. So I don't know what I learned from it, but so this discrimination that I faced was not because of my skin color, not because of my maybe because of my religion, but mostly because of my identity. So what happens is that I'm walking in the street at the school, in a secondary school, and there's a really cute girl walking in front of me, right? And like normally you cross people like this, yeah, like this. So what she does is she's coming in front of me and she makes a huge round. And I was like, wait, what's happening? Like, do I smell bad? I didn't, of course. And then I looked back and she comes back to the same path that she was sent to walk by. And goes like, continues. And I was like, what just happened? I was 12 years old, I'm 13 probably, and I don't know what I learned from this, but I just learned, I think I learned that such thing as discrimination exists in this world, like regardless of what race, what religion, what person, what kind of type of person you are. So that was the worst thing.
Thank you very much. Since we are running out of time and the break is getting closer for better or worse, I would invite you all not to hold your questions back, but to approach the panelists in the break. And with this, I would like to close the panel discussion and to say one more time thank you for our panelists and for the audience for the attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.